Today I'm at the Wharton Furnace in Fayette County. This first furnace I ever saw. My father brought me here over 40 years ago. And at the time I had really no idea what these furnaces were about. But after some years of research, I just see how important this is. Really the beginning of the steel age in Pittsburgh. We'll go through what these furnaces do and the significance of them. So as you can see from the placard, this was built in 1839. This is a cast iron furnace, and some of the products of this cast iron furnace were cannonballs that were used by the Union Army. What we see on the left, again, this is typical of the furnaces. You can hear, but you can't see the stream. These needed water to run a wheel, and that wheel, which this is the wheel pit, the water would be diverted back, and it would run a wheel, which would run a bellows, which would blow air through this. And this was a charcoal furnace, so they would take all the wood, you know, what you see now are all the trees, but probably within a year of operation, the whole area would have been clear cut. And this was basically the center of the community. This would employ maybe 100 people, 15 or 20 people just cutting trees, making charcoal. Other people growing food. Then you had the molders, you had the iron master, or I'm not sure where the iron master house is. Some of these places it's a beautiful brick, beautifully restored. Other places it was wooden houses, wooden structures. So if you can imagine this scene 100 years ago, over this side of the building would have been a lean-to. Over here would have been another structure. There would be a ramp leading from the top of this to the hillside, and the whole process would be that the men, 20, 30 laborers, would bring iron ore up onto the hillside in wheelbarrows. They would run them up the ramp, they would dump them into the furnace, they would put charcoal, which would be wood, they would take the wood, cut the trees down, pretty much bury them in dirt, and then burn them to get all the hydrocarbons out, and then that would make like the charcoal briquettes that we have today for cooking. And then they would use limestone. Limestone acted as a flux, some other properties, metallurgical properties for that. So then they would start the fire. The bellows would blow air through here, and then when we get around, so this would have just been black, smoky fire, just fire blowing, belching up through here, and smoke, and really a nasty place. I mean, it was really, really important because, again, towns were built around here, but it was just so devastating for the economy because every tree, I mean, none of the trees, for as far as you could see, would be here. This would just all be clear cut, and just the black smoke. And a lot of neighbors complained, but again, this brought a lot of money. What would happen is once the iron ingot or pig was cast or poured, it would be put on a barge or put on a train, maybe 1800s or train, and then it would be taken into Pittsburgh to be processed. So we're currently standing in the wheel race, and this is where the wheel would be located. As the water would come over, it would work a bellows. A series of levers would move up and down and actually pump air, not oxygen, but air, just the normal air that we're breathing in. And that would increase the combustion, that would melt the cast iron. You can see a stonemason, a stone cutter would come in and just use the local stones. That's why these are so prevalent in this side of Pennsylvania, is just because this sandstone is easily available. So these would be cut. Again, this furnace is in great condition, great shape. There are some other furnaces that I like to visit because they're decomposing. One of the sides is off of it, and you can actually see how those furnaces were made. So inside this furnace would be a lining out of brick, and so they would put the outer stones in first. I'm not sure whether they staggered these. Put a layer of brick, and then part of the furnace. They would probably build the fire brick furnace, and then with this, and just fill the rest in with just the rocks that are sitting here. We'll take a walk around. So now we move into the hearth area, and I say this is pretty much where all the main business of the furnace was. This was, they would somehow come in here and plug this hole. I'm not exactly sure what they would have used, but once once they would pull the stopper or the cork out, pretty much like a cast iron furnace today, there'd just be, the first thing that would come out would be almost like molten lava. You would have the slag from the limestone that would float to the top. That would be the first thing. And then they would start pulling, more of the cork out, and then the cast iron would just start flowing down through here in a series of T's that they would just dig in the ground. And you see how thick that is, maybe 1.5 inches, so it wouldn't be like it's a foot or anything. These guys would just basically let this all run off, and maybe you had 5-6 tons of pour. I'm not exactly sure what the number is. The reason they did that is they would send a main runner out and a runner off to each side, 3, 4, and 5, and in about that type of area. And they would call those pigs because that kind of looked like the piglet suckling on the mom pig. As we get closer in here, we'll try to get a shot up and underneath. I don't know, we'll be able to see what it looks like. But that's the inside of the furnace. Which is nice with these cameras because you certainly wouldn't want to crawl in there. So there's still a lot of these furnaces that are available in this condition in Western Pennsylvania, Ohio, West Virginia. Materials in. This was a 24-hour day operation. They would just keep loading in the iron ore, the old cast iron, the pieces of things that had broken off that hadn't quite been poured correctly, and they would just continue melting and recycling. So one of the things would come out here, as you can see this is an ingot or a pig. This is one of the last ingots. Some people call these ingots, back then they called them pigs, because what would happen is as the fire was blown out, not blown out, I guess you would remove the cork or stopper, which is not made out of cork obviously, but the cast iron would be just flown down here through the ground, and it would solidify into this plate. So again, this is one of the last ingots that they said was donated, which was pretty cool. So this would come out, and then they would, that's something that's movable, by horse-drawn carriage, or maybe 3 or 4 people. You would load that into a wagon and you would take that. These furnaces produced, tons and tons, hundreds of tons of cast iron over the life of the furnace. Then eventually, with localization, things in Pittsburgh and charcoal not being as prevalent, they would go to coke. Sometimes the coke would run out. There's not a good supply of coal. Not a good supply of iron ore, really just not cost effective to run these. So again, there's a number of these furnaces in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. They're all the basic, same basic shape. They would all have a hearth, they would all have an inlet. They're all basically the same type design. There's some round ones, there are some square ones. Again, some are caved in, some are completely gone. People like to take these stones and make things from them. But some of these are preserved as federal historic landmarks. Other ones are just local landmarks. But you can see the general shape. We'll see what's on this side. So this side has another opening. Real small opening. We'll go up around back. So again, the water would come in through the stream. It would be diverted down through a canal that would pump a water wheel. That water wheel would run a bellows. The bellows would blow air into to the left side of this as we came looking at the front, and then the cast iron would come out. So in addition to just making these pigs, there were guys called molders. The molders would have their flask, cope and drag. It would be a sand mold, and they would actually make frying pans. They would make cannonballs. They would make cast iron stoves. So all those pieces, all that stuff would be made at this place. So really, once the guy rang the bell or whatever to let everyone know that this was getting ready to pour, everyone would just kind of jump into action and come running down here. Some guys with ladles, and they would go ahead and do their thing. So looking at this furnace now, everything's nice and green. There's nobody here. There's no noise. That's the perfect scene. The babbling of the brook. But again, back then it would have just been almost a quagmire, just so much stuff going on. This wouldn't have been a nice clean area. There's what if 300 some or 400 tons of cast iron comes out, you have 300 tons of materials going in. So there would be, you know, wood, charcoal stacked everywhere. There'd be a whole building that just had the charcoal in it. There'd be a whole building of, you know, the iron ore. Or there would be, you know, the places where the molders would put their equipment. And there would be the slag. Obviously, the slag would come out. That would be the first thing. Once you blew the furnace, you pulled the cork. The first thing, the lightest part of it would have been the slag, the limestone. That would have come out, and that would be glass. You know, almost like a glass, almost like a lava, you know, lava if you look at pictures of that. And that had to be gotten rid of. And I don't really see that anywhere here. I mean, there may be traces down here in the stream. We'll take a walk and look through that. But you can see the stones, you know, that was just so abundant. But when these things were put together, you know, the land was pretty cheap, but the furnace may have been, you know, $20,000, which today would have been a, you know, significant, a huge effort. But I mean, each stone has a purpose. Each stone has a place, and they have taken these furnaces apart and moved these furnaces. I don't know how you would restack one of these furnaces or actually move it 10 miles like Old Laurel, New Laurel Furnace. So there was a book that was put out in the 60s, which will be down in the notes, where some people went through and documented each one of these furnaces. You look at some of the pictures, and it's just, you know, while the furnaces were still not operational, but before they started into decay, just all of the, you know, land, all the trees, everything was just completely gone. You wouldn't be able to come to look at these pictures, and I know Penn State Library has some pictures of some of the old furnaces versus pictures today, and it's just a complete contrast to what it was. So here you are in the back side of the furnace. Again, this is probably more of the supply side of the furnace. You look towards the hillside. Again, the charging platform would have been a wooden ramp with probably a roof over top of it, you know, so it wouldn't get rained on and stuff. And you would try and make that as level as possible. And you see there's some carved stone here. So this whole thing would have been carved. There's a guardrail, which to me indicates the road. So they would have wheeled this up either by horse and wagon. Once again, I was trying to get on top, but the brush is just too bad up there right now. Maybe later in the fall after things die off. A couple things to be concerned about. Obviously, ticks. You know, ticks are pretty bad here in Western Pennsylvania. I've run into snakes. Also, you know, no trespassing. So you want to make sure that you're allowed to be on the property. This one's a site, I'm not sure on the hillside, so we really won't go up there too much. But there's nothing posted, so we always try to observe. You know, don't want someone walking on your property, so you should kind of be respectful, not walk on theirs. So you can see how much loose rock is laying here, just naturally. I mean, there's no squared edges. So I'm assuming this is all naturally occurring. But, you know, some of these big rocks, this is what I would imagine if I was looking at one of these furnaces. You know, you didn't have the geological studies and things that we have now. So people would actually walk through here, survey the land. They would find the stream, which was important for those furnaces. Later they were switched to steam, and again those would still want to be near water. The important fact here is would you want a source of iron ore, which there's iron ore in Pennsylvania. The stone is available, obviously the limestone is available, trees are abundant, and you know, you had the water and you had the rocks. So in about 2003, a man by the name of Richard Parks got a hold of the original book. S&T, I guess is the references that I see to it. And he went through and he located a lot of these furnaces based on, you know, not the topographical or GPS coordinates, but basically the land coordinates. And he went through and he documented and took photos of a good bit of these, did a lot of research on it, and he put that on his website. So there'll be a link for his website in the show notes. Take a look at those. Again, I've been to probably 20 of these furnaces. I'm going back through trying to document these. I mean, he did a fantastic job. I don't think that YouTube was out then, but I'm trying to go through and recreate what he did to at least show some of the, you know, the better preserved furnaces, and even some of the, you know, not so well preserved furnaces. Again, you find a furnace like this, and you know, my first question as an engineer is, how was that made? So you find one of these furnaces that's you know, one of the walls is broken off. You can actually crawl back inside and you can see the lining of the furnace. You can see how they, you know, what the inside of these brick look like, or stone that they cut. So it's pretty cool stuff. But again, if you're in Somerset County off of historic Route 40. This is a good thing to see. Thanks for watching.